The society worldwide was founded by the pair of people who opened its first efforts in New York City and moved to India and worked from there. Madame Blavatsky, being one of these founders, is responsible for much of the literature of the society. And in her, you might call main work, The Secret Doctrine, she presents the Theosophical philosophy, sometimes called the Theosophical worldview, in rather difficult to understand language. And that view has been presented and rewritten, not changed in essence, but presented in words that are a little easier for us in the West to understand. That first basic proposition, which brought the Eastern way of thinking and of living and of self-discovery to the West, is contained in these words. The universe and all that exists within it are one interrelated and interdependent whole. This means a very different point of view for each of us in terms of meditation or in terms of living, in terms of self-knowing, than the concepts with which most of us have been brought up. Most of us, conditioned and trained and schooled, see ourselves as very separate from every other being, kind of creature. It's a big step for us to think that we might experience and know the truth of that the universe and all that exists within it are one interrelated and interdependent whole. And if it were true for us, if we could know this for truth for ourselves, it would change our whole view of what our purpose in life is, why we are here, what we're supposed to be doing, and our whole view of the universe, wouldn't it? And it would give us at the same time the concept that if the universe is one, in fact there is only one reality, one consciousness, one life, one existence in the universe, then we are all related, aren't we? And this, of course, is the basis for the theosophical concept of universal brotherhood without distinctions of race, creed, etc. So what I would like to suggest this evening is that meditation is one way in which we might experience that one reality, that one life, that one truth. We can read many, many books, study under teachers, find the guru. All of these are helps and may encourage us to try in ways we might not without them. But in the final analysis, each one of us must find this truth within his own nature. He must do the work for himself, and he must find out what he is, who he is, and in that discovery come to the experience of the oneness. This is the Eastern philosophy, I could say, the theosophical worldview that the society presents. I'm giving it in a very simplified way, and I hope that that simplified way may be an easier way for people to follow and to experiment with than leading you or giving you a list of books, teachers, gurus, etc. for you to experiment with. Why not start at the beginning to get to know what is closest and easiest to discover, which is oneself. And there are many, many ways of meditating, many methods, many teachers, as I said, many people who have practiced and want to give their experience. And what am I doing but sitting here and repeating that and contradicting my own idea, which is that I have to discover the truth for myself. I can only say that you also must do that eventually. That self-discovery can be assisted, however, by meditation. And I like to and have worked on developing methods, not that they are unique, but that can be chosen from other people's work, that are so simple that they are almost methodless methods. And I'd like this evening for us to experiment together with a couple of those and ask you for your feedback. Every day we experience ourselves as separate, don't we? We are focused in that separateness by, as I said already, our educational methods, our home training, everything that happens to us. But I think there are a few experiences that along the way point out that there may be a different way of looking at it. And one experience that's very real to me, at least, is having had 3 children a long time ago. And I remember still very poignantly when my first tiny little baby was put in my arms and looking into the eyes of that little creature. This has happened with other babies also, to see a wealth, a beauty, a wisdom that is so clear and shining that you feel that this little creature knows everything that you wish you could know. I don't know if other mothers have experienced that. I've heard them say that it is so. And that same child growing up and with all the conditioning that I and my husband and the teachers and so on have given has become a certain kind of person convinced of her separateness. And this is what life does to us. So if we have the idea, as presented in the Theosophical view, that there is a reality behind all the separateness, there is a oneness behind all the conditioning, the purpose of meditation is that we can find this oneness for ourselves. We might ask, if we are so conditioned and find it so difficult, where do we find the tools? What are the ways in which we can experiment? And I would suggest that the parts of ourselves that convince ourselves that we are separate, that we are physically separate, emotionally separate, mentally separate, are the tools we can use to experience the oneness. How do we begin? And it's suggested that we have in our minds, in our consciousness, a beginning fact. And that fact is the fact of existence. I exist, and no argument can strengthen my security of conscious existence. No arguments can weaken it. It's above and beyond all proofs. All of us know that we live, that we exist. Whatever happens to us, there's something that maintains that I-ness, that insists, I am here, I am something. We may not know what we are, but the existence of the I-ness is a fact. This is one primary truth. All others are secondary and derived from it. And as I in life plunge more and more deeply into my own consciousness, I pass through layer after layer of that me and discard them as not myself in my veriest essence. But I am always there, sinking more and more into myself. And when I reach a certain depth, I know that all other selves are as myself, and there is only one self, one essential being, and that myself and others are but parts of one mighty whole, one self in innumerable forms. That universal self, we could call it that God, that Creator, that one life, pulsing in innumerable forms, one breath, breathing in all that is. This is the one impregnable demonstration of our creation. All other arguments amount only to a probability. This alone is demonstrative and irrefutable. As the Kathopanishads suggest, the self, that is with a capital S, the self reveals its own nature. So with that background, that there is a oneness, a reality behind all the seeming separateness and differences and competitiveness, all of the difficulties of everyday life, and that the nature of that oneness is really something beyond description, but we attempt to describe it by calling it love, compassion, peace, oneness, consciousness, life. These are all aspects of the oneness, as it were, as a diamond has many facets. And so we can begin with the fact that we are conscious beings. And as we try whatever method it is that we have decided to experiment with, and I like to think of us not tying ourselves to any particular method, but experimenting with a variety, giving each enough time to ascertain whether it is helping us or not. We slowly begin to know ourselves as we are, as human beings. I think that many methods of meditation begin by introducing ourselves to our physical being. And this is a very good way to start. After all, if we are, as it were, spiritual beings, the tools we have to express that nature, that oneness, are very important. And so the physical body is regarded as essentially to be healthy, to be clean, to be pure, by whatever methods we find are helpful in that area. We can, I think, by sitting quietly at least some regular part of every day, even become aware of what our body tells us about our thinking, about our patterns, about how we meet life. So that's a part of ourselves not to be denigrated or looked on as negative, but a most useful tool. And as we sit quietly, we can become acquainted with the kinds of emotional patterns that we have developed through a lifetime of living, perhaps many lifetimes of living, if such things are brought as we come back again and again. And I think that as we see the emotional patterns in that quiet time of self-examination, which is an introduction to meditation, then we can see how those patterns that are causing us difficulty can begin to change. Just the fact that our attention is brought to them, if we take enough time in life to stop and look at what we are, we will find many interesting things that we didn't suspect, both positive and negative. I can assure you of the negative at least, that when we sit down to get to know ourselves, we must first of all decide to be honest with ourselves, to see what is there, to deal with it, and in that way to change it. And it's true that as we come to know how our minds work, because I think everyone who has meditated, and perhaps you're here tonight because you have tried many methods, I think most people will say that they have trouble with the mind. The mind, we have built what we tend to call the concrete mind, that we have nourished and made a very effective computer, We have stored many, many facts in it, and they're there to haunt us. Useful because they're often just a nuisance. Old ideas about people who are no longer what we picture them as in the computer, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of trash, as well as a lot of very useful and necessary information about living. So we get to know and realize, as we are sitting quietly examining these processes in our own nature, that we are not these parts. They are the tools for living, but we are something behind and something more permanent than these. And so that we gradually recognize that we have powers, as it were, abilities that we didn't dream we had. We find that we have the power to change our whole view of life, our whole picture of a friend, our whole belief system, whatever it is, and to see that that which brings us grief can be understood, and by understanding it, changed and cast away, as it were. Outgrown, perhaps better to say. So that I've, through my life, I think, constantly been looking for ways in meditation that this process, because if it's true that the reality is there for all of us, all the time, ever present, and here we are imprisoned in the thinking, feeling, doing personality. The whole purpose of meditation is somehow to break out of that prison and experience the wholeness, right? So it may be simpler than we think, though the mind presents certainly great difficulties, because we have given it such power over us. And our emotions, we have given them such power over us to limit us so that we never see the whole. But still, as in the baby's eyes, and perhaps in nature, and with beautiful music, and painting, many of the art activities, as it were, we experience something that gives us divine discontent with this separate existence. And that breaks through even for a second to give us a little glimpse of something wider, more beautiful, with more peace, with more clarity, or bring intuition so that we can see a whole thing in a different light, a whole situation or a whole problem. And I think that the other thing, or one of the other keys that was brought to us by the Theosophical pioneers in their experience in Eastern philosophy and with Eastern teachers, as it were, was the idea that we must go within, deeper and deeper within, through meditation for this experience of truth. One of the meditative ways that is most simple, and we can't do it this evening, but I can tell you of the value, and it's so simple that you can use it every day of your life without changing a single thing in your life, though it may bring about changes, certainly significant ones. And that is the practice of walking in the present moment. In the little pamphlet that was sent out, I described this in a sentence this evening by saying the whole universe exists in the present moment. To live in the present moment is to know the universe in a new way, and this is meditation. In the Zen meditation walk, it's simply a matter of going out for a walk, but there are some special instructions in terms of keeping one's mind focused in the present moment. To keep any thought of past or future out of the mind. The discipline, this is all it is. And it sounds very simple, but extremely difficult. But fun. So that when you go out in the snow, what happens? We say right away, yesterday there was no snow, and probably next week there won't be any snow. Right away we are no longer in the present. We're not seeing the snow as it is. We're not seeing the beauty as it is. We're not seeing whatever is in the present moment because we're comparing it right away with what happened before and what will happen in the future. And when we meet people, we do this. We meet an old friend and we say in our minds, that's how the mind works, this person is fatter or thinner, this person looks different, has a new haircut. Right away we're comparing so that we're living in the past, comparing the present person with the past person. And so we don't really contact the person in the present. We don't really know that person in the sense of reality. So when we go for a Zen walk, we take the instruction, which is to keep bringing the mind, keep being aware of the mind, relating to past or future, keep bringing it back to the present. And while it sounds terribly simple, it's very difficult to do, but it brings a whole new view of the world that we're in. To experience snow one-to-one, as it were, is very different from comparing it with last week and next week. And while I don't know if you believe me, but I would urge you to try it on your way home. As you walk out, see how hard it is to keep looking at the snow, at the trees that have a little layer of snow on the branches, and how the particles glisten in the moonlight or the light from the window. This is reality in the present moment. To see what is there now, then we are focusing in the wholeness, in the unity, in the oneness. And when we meet the old friend, to see the friend as he or she is at this moment is to keep the mind focused so that that you see the reality of the person and you know that person in a new way rather than bringing in the past or the expectancy of the future. This is just one way to open up a knowledge of how our minds work, because as we use this very simple little technique of keeping, as we're doing dishes or laundry or office work or whatever we do, keeping our minds focused in the present moment brings a tremendous release of energy we've got tied up in the past and in the future. So try that. If you have, how many people have tried a Zen walk ever in, nobody? Nobody ever? No? Yes. Some people, yes. Okay. So I hope a lot of you will try it. It sounds terribly simple. It's very difficult, but if you follow the instructions, brings about a new life. I once tried this with a group, some older people in it, and one of the people, in fact, she is a lady who was once the editor of our magazine here, said, you know, Dorothy, I had never walked from one house or one place to another without thinking about what I was going to do next. And she said, you know, I never saw the flowers as I walked by. I didn't see the people. I didn't see anything. I was thinking, now I've got to think about what I'm going to do tomorrow or later this evening. And so much is lost. The wholeness, the perfection of the present moment is lost. And we have missed the opportunity to know the world as one. This is just one little trick that you can experiment with yourselves. How are we doing for time? is this too large a group? Do you think we could do a little experimentation? Or would you like to do that? I read in the magazines that people want to do things that they don't want to be lectured at and treated like children in school and so on. So I thought we might try a little experiment if everybody's willing. And let us prepare ourselves, as it were, to be quiet. Probably put feet flat on the floor, though it doesn't really matter, or however your feet are comfortable. Sort of settle yourself in your chair so that your body is not going to bother you. It'll be reminding you that it's there separately, as it were. Take a few moments to put down things that will cause you difficulty because you want to focus inside your own nature, to be aware of yourself, your parts first, and see what happens. And let's start by being aware of our feet and legs and let them relax. We can take some deep breaths to help relax ourselves. Check out our hips, hands, elbows, shoulders. Adjust and make them comfortable as we continue to take deep breaths. Relax the neck. Let it be easy. Let the head be relaxed. Make sure your mouth is not holding a lot of tension. And your forehead, your scalp. Take a deep breath and let all the tension out and relax. But don't go to sleep. Be very aware, relaxed, and centered. And visualize someone you love. See that face. It may be your dog, cat, person, whoever, whatever. And let whatever feelings come up in you, let them come up. But this is someone that you've chosen, that it's easy to feel a flow of affection for. Visualize that person well and happy. Surrounded by light. And let your love flow out to that person. If the mind throws up ideas, look at them, put them aside, and feel the love. And if the mind keeps throwing up questions, ideas, about all kinds of things, just recognize this is the mind, the computer working, but I am not that mind. I am feeling love. And let that love flow out in all directions to everything that lives. If you lose the feeling, contact the person again. Send love to that loved one and let it expand outward to everything. And come back to the group slowly. Come back slowly. Open your eyes. Be aware of the atmosphere in this room. As you come back, just be aware. Is it the same, different? seems to me that there's a greater degree of peace. Right. Anyone agree? Anyone disagree? Okay. Just by being quiet together for a few moments and being able to feel love. Not easy though, is it? There's lots of difficulties. And because there are difficulties, there's one other little exercise I'd like to introduce that you may find helpful. And this one is perhaps my favorite to introduce people to the idea of meditation. I got it from a book written by the Dalai Lama. It's a very simple beginning Buddhist meditation exercise, which the Dalai Lama says, I'm sure with his tongue in cheek, that if you practice it daily for, say, 10 minutes, that for 1 year you will have control of the mind. And I haven't found that it's done that yet. I don't feel I have control of my mind yet, so. But very, very helpful. And in this one, are you ready? Are you too peaceful to do it again? Okay. Be sure that you're calm, bodies are comfortable. And begin to be aware of your breathing. Just be aware of your breathing. Not counting how many minutes it takes, any of those things. Just aware of the breath flowing in through the nostrils, nourishing the body, flowing out again. And if the mind, as it usually does, makes objections, brings up questions, ideas, just say, I am not the mind. I am the reality. I am the breath. I am life. I am the breath. And focus the mind, using the mind to free oneself from the mind. Focus the mind on the breath. Flowing in through the nostrils, nourishing the body, flowing out again. Breathing in and out. Focusing on the breath. Being aware of the mind, asking questions, knowing I am not the mind, I am the breath. the breath which is all of life. All of consciousness. All of peace. Sinking into that peace. Behind all movement. Keep bringing the mind back to the breath. I am that breath of life. I am that peace. And come back to the group. Be aware of the feeling, the atmosphere. Too large a group to have a lot of discussion, but I'm happy to hear any difficulty, any question. These are just 2, 3 very simple ways to begin knowing who we are, seeing ourselves in a new light, realizing that we have much more of potential, of energy, of happiness than we thought possible. Okay. Yes?
Why do you think it's so much easier to concentrate in a group than it is when you're at home alone and trying to do the meditation?
Well, I think everybody helps everybody else. For some people this is true. For other people, they find it impossible in a group. So I accept that. For some people it's just not possible in a group. And others find the group very helpful. Very individual thing. But if everybody's trying, as it were, everyone helps everyone else. It's very difficult to make oneself sit down and be quiet with oneself, isn't it? In the world, first thing we do is turn on the television, call up a friend. We're so afraid to be alone with ourselves, to get to know who we are. Any other? Yes?
I find it very difficult trying to still my mind when I'm trying to meditate like that. It's just because it seems like it's going a mile a minute, and it's like a team of horses running wild.
Yeah, you have much company. I think it's the universal difficulty. But when we think of the lifetimes of energy we've invested in developing the mind, you know, it's a very wonderful tool, but it tends to want to dominate the situation. And so the minute we say to it, I'm not the mind, it says, I'll show her. I'll bring up all my lifetimes of experience to prove she's wrong, that I dominate. And so, there's that old quotation about the mind being the slayer of the real. And it goes on to say, let the disciple slay the slayer. In other words, to slay the mind, but we don't want to be mindless. So I think it's really saying, let us slay that aspect of the mind, that it is the one who runs the show. And we have to assert the fact and know that there's something more real than the mind, which is there steering the ship, as it were, that we are. I don't know if that helps any, but I think it's just, I find the breathing exercise very helpful in that it settles one down. You can see the mind doing its little things, and you know that is not your reality. That is the tool to work with. I think that's the beginning, at least, of gaining some control of the mind. So when you know that you are not that computer, you know that you are something more than that, then the first step is taken. And as I think I said earlier, each of us must do this for himself. Other question? Yes.
What do you consider a successful meditation? One of the things, and probably the only thing that I've gotten out of it so far, and I've only been doing it for a short time, is physical relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, I thought I would get some great message or, lessons for the day, but I've never experienced it.
Well, I think that the whole process is changing everything in us, isn't it? We can't expect much in the way of results in a few days, a few hours, a few weeks. Some people, whether they've meditated in past lives or earlier in this life, may find it easier. But I think there's a universal discovery that when you begin to meditate, at first it seems very difficult and that there are very few results. So if you can relax, that's a good thing, right? And perhaps there are benefits that we don't see in terms of dealing with the day's difficulties. You slowly realize that you can deal with those a little more easily. You have a little more tolerance. You might have a little more patience, a little more energy to work with, a little more strength. So it seems to be the changes come in very small increments. And after perhaps many years, you might be able to say that you realize great inspiring thoughts, or that you see something you've read in a new light, with a new meaning, because more of you is being brought into use. I think it's a sort of very natural process of getting to know that we are much more than we thought we were, or that we felt we were, or that we were told we were. So it's freeing ourselves from the conditioning which we spent a lot of time putting in there, slowly releasing a lot of energy tied up in that conditioning. Does that answer?
Yes,
Yeah. Did I see another hand? Yes.
What are your thoughts on the idea of using music or guided meditations as tools?
Many people begin meditation with music, or perhaps play certain pieces of music and then turn it off and are quiet. Whatever helps. My theory is that whatever helps you to be quiet and get to know yourself is a useful thing. You may find you don't need it after a while, or that's very helpful. Always, yes.
And one other question. The idea of meditation to me is to bring about a state of bliss or peace, by which I'm then open to the awareness of those that are around me or whatever is around me.
Self-transformation, in other words.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. How would one go about transforming the idea of sitting down and meditating and bringing themselves into a state of bliss, and then apply it on a day-to-day basis, or just in every moment that they are, apply it in relationship to whatever is there? In other words, active meditation.
I think that if you meditate, the results do that. It's a natural process.
Okay.
That if you are changed inside in your view of yourself, that becomes evident to everyone. Is that what you mean?
Okay, so that
Yeah.
then would be a higher purpose of meditation?
Yes, I think that was the Eastern philosophy view, which I didn't make clear, that through meditation, only being one way of doing this, self-transformation is possible. If you know yourself, then you must ultimately know everyone else. You must ultimately know that life is one, that peace and tranquility is the natural state for every human being. The world would be transformed, wouldn't it, if we could all plug in, as it were, to that reality and know it in every minute of our lives. I think that I have never met anyone yet who is able to do that, but I think I have met a few people who have experienced that reality, and it shines through their being out to the world, and has a transformative effect on others. Perhaps this is the greatest value that one, as the Buddha, when he reached self-transformation, said, "I am one with life," right? And it became evident to everyone that he was different in a very special way, that he manifested that love, that compassion, that unity, that oneness. And I think the message that the society still brings to people who come to these meetings is that this is possible for everyone. It may take time, but it is possible. And I think enough happens to us along the way in terms of revealing to ourselves our weaknesses and strengths, even in slight measure, that we are convinced that it's worth the effort that it entails. Did I see a hand anywhere? Yes.
What do you think of subliminal recordings? Do you think Bigger help?
I don't know enough about subliminal recordings to be able to answer you. Actually, you mean music that brings out?
You got the messages underneath the music?
Yes.
Getting the tempo of the music?
Well, I guess my personal feeling would be that, in a way, it's intruding on. It would be intruding on me if somebody played it and didn't tell me what it was.
No, you know about it.
You know about it. Okay. You mean you use it as a method of raising your consciousness to a degree of peace and tranquility. If it works, and there's nothing harmful, I would look very carefully to what kind of messages, because you're putting them on your brain, aren't you, in your computer, though they may not be in words. And they're there, then you have to deal with them again later on. I think any method one adopts is only a temporary method and can be abandoned when no longer needed. Okay? And thank you very much for your attention.